This is a tough topic, but we got a fun one for you because I fired my doctor yesterday. What? I know, it's crazy. Before we get into that, though, got to make sure that we are, in fact, present and live. Give me a one in the comments if you can hear me. Make sure my mic's working. But today we've got, man, just a painful lesson learned. I had to learn it the hard way. I thought that I had a good enough doctor for a long time. And I'm going to get into a little bit of the details today. I'm not going to bash him. I think that in general, he does a good job, but it just isn't quite as open to greatness as I am, and I'm looking for, right. It kind of falls under the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" kind of mindset, and that just to me rubbed me the wrong way. But before I get into that, I also want to mention that today's little topic discussion, table topics. Got an I can hear you on Facebook. Awesome. Today's topic is going to be participation encouraged. The reason for that, I want us all to have a discussion so that I can bring your questions, your thoughts, and insights into a podcast episode, either this next week, maybe the week after, because this topic has come up often in groups that I'm in conversations that I've had with other type 1s, in should I fire my doctor, my endo, my dietitian, my medical team, whoever it is, and how do you find a new one? How do you know what to look for? How do you know what questions to ask? And ultimately for me, it was a recent interaction that I had with my doctor, and I was requesting some out of routine blood labs. I said, you know what? Hey, I'm going in for my A1C and a few other things. Can we just tack on a few blood tests that I've heard from my triathlon coach that they're good to have baselines tracked, right? To understand what are the hormones doing? What's your energy level, B12? What's your testosterone? Like, these are just things that I'd like to track along my journey as a triathlete. Can we get those done? And long story short, he was very degrading in how he responded, and basically said, if you don't have any symptoms, we're not going to test for it. And so that to me said that we're not looking for how to be our best. We're looking for how do we survive. And I don't appreciate that. But I let it go. And I'm very loyal in how I interact with others. You know, if we have a good relationship, a good backing, I'm not going to jeopardize that from a single less than ideal conversation. And so I said, you know what, whatever, I'll just let it go, and I'll see him in 6 months or whatever my next checkup is. And I came home, told my wife, and she was floored. She's like, what? He works for you. He needs to be doing what you say. He should order these things. It doesn't cost him anything. What's the issue? And I was like, yeah, that's an interesting thought. I think that this is a little bit aggressive. I don't know if we need to be that angry that he said no to my lab requests. But the next day, I decided to go in for the labs, you know, whatever was ordered for me, because I also needed to get my A1C done. And I was talking to the phlebotomist, which is the person that draws your blood, right? And I was like, hey, random question for you. Does the hospital, and I'm trying not to like throw the hospital under the bus or the doctor, anybody. I don't like dragging people through the mud. I was like, does the hospital get mad at doctors for just like giving tests out all willy-nilly? And that's the actual word that I use. It's like all willy-nilly. And I'm like, why did I say it like that? That's just me. I'm a little quirky. But she was like, no, why? And I was like, oh, well, I asked for some blood labs. And, you're taking half of them right now, but the other half, my doctor vetoed. He's like, nah, it's stupid. You don't need those tests. She was like, what? I've never heard of that. She's like, we literally have people, while they're getting blood drawn, ask us, hey, you know what? Could I also get tested for this random thing? And we'll email their doctor and hear back in 2 minutes that we got the go ahead. Nobody cares. We just take whatever blood you got and we test it for stuff. I was like, is there any reason why that my doctor would have vetoed these things? And she had a similar thought process to my wife, where she's like, it might be a power trip kind of thing, because you said your coach told you to ask your doctor. Maybe he feels threatened by your coach and wants to reestablish dominance, that like he's the doctor, he knows everything. And it's like, okay, that's an interesting thought, maybe, and still I want to believe the best in people. So I'm like, I don't know, it's still a little far-fetched. Long story short, we get all the blood drawn, of which, there's like 15 vials of blood. I'm starting to feel lightheaded at this point. And she's like, you know what? You should get a new doctor. She's getting fired up too. I was like, wow, two people now. And she's like, there's this guy, Dr. So and so. You would love him. And I was like, well, hold on. Is he a pill pusher? She's like, no. And I was like, okay, cool. Because like I'm getting into triathlons, and she's like, oh my gosh, he loves that kind of stuff. And I was like, really? This is interesting. I was like, I'm going for like healthy lifestyle kind of stuff and being my best. And she was like, oh, he's all about that. So long story short, I asked her, I was like, okay, hypothetically, if I were to just switch doctors today, how would I even do that? Right. And this is me being honest. I didn't know the process. All I know is that when you get a new insurance, you go through a process. But I was like, how do you drop your existing doctor and get a new one? Is there a gap? Is there a process? Interviews, like application? How do you do this thing? And she was like, I'll hook you up. And I was like, oh, okay. I felt like I was getting a special treatment. She was like, follow me. And I followed her, and she's like, well, no, go out the patient exit and don't follow me to the back desk. She's like, follow me to the front. I almost went to the employees area. And we get to the front desk, and she's chatting with the front desk lady. And she's like, oh, Dr. So-and-so. Oh, and Dr. So-and-so. Trying for both. And so she's got this like behind the scenes access, right? And she's like, oh man, Dr. So-and-so, he's so popular. Everybody loves him. Turns out he's full, but we're going to try to get you on the waiting list. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. This is moving fast. And so before I know it, they've already gone into the system, axed my last doctor, and put me on 2 new waiting lists to I hopefully get on these amazing doctors. And had a fantastic chat that night with some of my clients about this topic. And one of my clients brought up a really interesting strategy for finding a new doctor. But before I get to that, this is the part where I want your participation. See what you guys think. What would you look for in a new doctor or a new endo? What kind of questions would you be asking? What are you looking for? Character traits, maybe background, maybe what they're going to recommend if they're a pill pusher, like what I was asking. And what is that process? What does it look like for you? And then second question is, what would lead you to be like, you know what? That's the last straw. I'm done with this doctor. I'm out. What's that look like for you? I want these in the comments because these are going to go into a podcast. I want to build out this into an episode where it's actually useful for people to know when is it time to cut the cord and no longer see that doctor or that endo. What am I looking for in my next one? How do I go about that process? I think I was lucky. I think I got the one phlebotomist who was like really gung-ho about patient advocacy because she helped me make that decision and to the next step during an appointment. She's just like, okay, let's do it. We're doing it right now. So I count myself blessed so far. We'll have to see about her recommendations, see if they are in fact awesome, as she says they are. But ultimately, it was an interesting process because I wanted it to happen. I realized after she had laid it out so kindly for me and blatantly that my doctor was no longer serving my interests, right? I was looking for lots of blood panels to see where everything is at so I can compare now at the beginning of my triathlete journey to maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, but also to see where I might be deficient in micronutrients specifically. So these are your vitamins and minerals. I want to know, hey, how's my vitamin B12? How's my vitamin D? How's my thiazinin? How's my magnesium? How's my liver and cholesterol doing, right? I want to know these things so I can know where I can make adjustments now before it gets too late, before I start to show symptoms. And I'm a lot more proactive than most patients. I realize that he's probably not used to it. But just to give you guys an idea, I wanted to share a little bit about what I was actually asking for. And some of these tests don't even fully make sense for everyone to get. And I think that's partially why my doctor was frustrated, my old doctor. I think the guy that's no longer my doctor. It's wild. Think about that was just yesterday. I've known him so long. It's actually, I think he's been my doctor for like 15 years. So that is kind of crazy. And these labs, I think he was partially frustrated because they are outside of the box, right? It's kind of like a naturopath recommendation, not so much Western medicine hospital system. So he probably thought it was just from a quack, somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. But that being said, I want to read them off to you because a lot of the labs did get approved. I had a nurse go through and approve them before I went in. And so found a different way. And these are some of the things that I had them pull up. So I'm going to see if I can get back into my account. Looks like I can. Cool. So I'm going to read these off to you. Hopefully you can't see my screen because this is my medical information. But I'm going to read these off. And I might even be mispronouncing some of these because this is not my area of expertise. This is just something that I requested. So I'd love to get a look at my blood labs. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see. A1C, of course. CBC, ferritin, vitamin B12, TSH, vitamin D, T4, adrenals, zinc, cholesterol, ApoB and LPA, hormones panel, liver enzymes, C-reactive protein, and rheumatoid factor, of which I believe 50% of those were denied. And so I'm going to have to go back a different time, maybe even go to a private office, private lab to get some of those tested. But those are the ones that I requested. And another reason for that, and I'm going to bring this up, this is likely going to be another training or maybe just something I keep internal with my clients, but giving you guys an idea for some of the common deficiencies for those of us living with type 1, right? So common deficiencies that I've seen, and I did a little bit of research on this, but what's more important is what is your deficiency. So I'm looking at my blood labs and making decisions based off of that. But before I have my labs done, I wanted to know what's the standard thing that people get tested for, right? So 5 came up as top 5 most common vitamin deficiencies within type 1 diabetics. So number 1, and some of them weren't even deficiencies. Some of them were just like, this is a healthy vitamin to supplement or to add with natural foods. So number 1, thiamine or B1. Next one is vitamin B12. I actually did get that one tested. Turns out rock solid there, doing good. Third is vitamin D. If you listen to this last week's podcast episode, I actually supplement vitamin D3, and I take a pretty significant dose, actually. I found out years ago that I was deficient. I no longer am. Got that retested yesterday. It's good, but it's also because I'm very consistent. Have not missed taking my vitamin D3 in years. I take it every single morning with breakfast. And that's because I was deficient. Okay. You might not be. Get your blood labs drawn. But again, back to the list. Magnesium is another one. Now with magnesium, I'll go deeper on this in a different video. I think this is helpful for later on, but you got to be careful about your sourcing. There's a ton of magnesium products out there. Most of them are trash. So you got to be really careful. Look for the expensive stuff, unfortunately, but typically, and this is just a generic rule of thumb, don't take my word for it, but typically the more expensive the stuff, the better quality. So I look at that to start, look at what kind of ingredients and sourcing they have on their labels, in their website, and then from there, I'll see what other cheaper options also have that. And then the last 2, vitamin E and vitamin C. So also good to have in good supply. So those are the thoughts that I wanted to look into as far as my labs go. And I got a chunk of those tested, but some of those are just good to have in general. One final note that I'll give you guys is that when looking at supplementing for vitamins and minerals or micronutrients, it's the umbrella they fall under, you want to look at natural sources. So if you can, get your vitamins and minerals from actual food. Way better. Okay. It's going to be much more beneficial for your health. But if you can't, if for whatever reason, like you're allergic to the food that has the vitamins and minerals you need, then yes, supplementation through pills can be helpful, pills and powders, right? But I would use that as a last resort. So if you can get it through natural foods, significantly better. It's better absorption. It's just better for your body's availability or bioavailability. So natural sources are better, but if you can't, daily multivitamin, still better than nothing for most people, but do your own research. Obviously, this is not medical advice. You got to go check it out yourself. Let's read some of the comments we got here, and feel free to keep adding them in. I want to see what you guys got in terms of questions to ask for a new doctor, when to know to fire your doctor, what it is that you look in a doctor or endo or dietitian or anybody. We're going to create a little list, a little resource for people on the next episode, I think. Let's see. Someone who sees you as a member of your own health team and your opinion is heard. Ooh, I love that. I did not feel heard. I asked for a lab and I got vetoed with very little explanation too. All right, next up, make sure they are also open to alternative or holistic ideas. Love this. It gets a lot of trash these days. People are like, oh, holistic, natural remedies, you're crazy. And it's like, no, there's a lot of science behind natural remedies, and it actually works. And the cool part is that they have less side effects typically. It's good to be aware of. Making sure that they are educated in my specific case. Yes. Make sure that they are a specialist for you. Don't see a generalist, see a specialist. That they don't rush you through. Yeah, if you feel like you're getting rushed, you got 2 minutes to ask questions, it's probably not a good fit, right? Next one, let's see. 52 years old, 38 years type 1, and have yet to find a decent diabetic doctor who works for all my type 1 needs. That is so frustrating, but so true. I'm going to share this in the actual episode. Maybe this is what goes up next week. I think this would be a good one. But there's some news with my endo as well. It's a big week for me. A lot of shifts. It's been a roller coaster. We got YouTube says, I choose another endo when she was scheduling me for office visit every 8 weeks. It became a finance issue. Interesting. That is good to take into consideration. Are they requiring too much or too little? Like my previous endo would schedule me like once a year. For me, that was awesome because everything was fine, right? I coach other people on how to take care of their diabetes. She was like, you know what you're doing. I don't need to see you every 3 months. One of her thoughts was to save me the bill. So I love that thought. I fire doctors who make me feel like they care about me. I fire doctors who make me feel like they care about me and my thoughts. I think I'm reading that wrong, but maybe who don't make me feel like they care about me and my thoughts. I had 10-year history of chronic kidney disease, and my endo never flagged it and discussed it with me. When I realized what was happening, I left that doctor and started working with a new primary who helped me get off my meds, and my kidney functions vastly improved. He listened to my goal of getting off as many meds as possible. That is a huge component here as well, is alignment, right? If your doctor is only going to push pills and you're looking to get off of pills, that's not in alignment, right? You want to make sure you have the same goal, or at the very least that they understand your goal. That's huge. Years ago, when I was doing all of my experimentation, right, discovering the 80-20 blood sugar formula, I wanted to try all the different diets to see what worked, what didn't, why it worked, how to identify these things. And I told my endo of the first one, I was like, hey, I'm going to go super strict vegan and do this whole low fat, high carb, whole food, plant-based thing. And she was like, don't do that. That's stupid. You're going to kill yourself. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I kind of want someone who's going to support me in experimenting, but I appreciate your concern. I'm going to do it anyways. And she was like, well, I rinsed my hands clean of you. I told you not to. And I mean, it kind of worked. It kind of didn't. I came back 6 months later and I was like, I figured out how to do it. Like I figured it out, but that was kind of tough. And she was like, yeah, I told you. But anyways, yes, make sure alignment is there. That's going to be key. So that's a big part of it. Obviously, I'm going to be going a bit deeper and crafting an episode around this topic because this is honestly, it's a big new chapter of my life, is that navigating how to find a new doctor. What kind of questions will I ask? What am I looking for? I got to do some soul searching of my own and figure out what I need with my medical team, especially because I don't rely on them heavily, but I do like to have them available. For me, I think that a big chunk of it is going to be the openness to innovation, to not get stuck with whatever sales rep told them to give me, but rather like be aware of the new diabetes technology. I don't want to have to educate my diabetes educator. I don't want to have to teach my endo about what's new in the world of diabetes, because that's supposed to be their job. And I might know a lot of these things already, but I want to be on the same page as them, not above them. So that's probably going to go into my search criteria, is somebody who is constantly updating their methods, their recommendations, and open-minded to a lot of different diets, lifestyles, exercises, choices, because that's how I live my life. I don't want to be stuck inside of a box of diabetes. It sounds like it sucks. All right. What's your take on bad cholesterol test results actually being a false flag? The idea is that dense SD-LDL-C test is the best marker for a cholesterol test. Ooh, that's a good question. So a big topic is cholesterol in general, right? Oh, I have high cholesterol. It's like, well, is that good or is that bad, right? And at a very basic level, we have HDL and LDL. HDL is known as high density lipoproteins. We're going to geek out for a second. You started this. high density lipoproteins. LDL is low density lipoproteins. LDL is the not so good kind. HDL is the good kind. Easy way to remember it. Pretend this isn't true, but pretend the H stands for healthy. HDL, high density lipoproteins. Just pretend that instead of it standing for high, it stands for healthy. So healthy, right? That is the generic top level piece of this discussion. But the entire discussion of cholesterol, I think, needs a whole do-over. I think everybody needs to just open their minds, not go into the research with biased thoughts, and really just pull apart. What is it? Is it good for us? Is it bad? What are the corresponding indicators? What is the causation versus correlation? Big discussion to be had there. So same thing for the sources, right? Eggs. There's a real easy one. Are eggs good for us or are eggs bad for us? I can give you 1,000 sources for each side. People who really believe they're good or really believe they're bad. Who's right? So, okay, we won't go too deep into that, but I appreciate the discussion topic. My new doctor is a type 1. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, that can be fantastic. I've actually had a few clients who their doctor had type 1, and they would compare and be like, oh, you're better than me, and I'm the doctor. So don't worry about improving. You just keep doing what you're doing because it's working. And they're like, my time in range is 70%. That's not great, right? Like, I'm not trying to compare myself. I'm trying to be my best version of myself. And so they ended up ditching their doctor to come work with us because they're like, well, Matt talks about 90 to 100% time in range. Why can't we just do that? And their doctor's like, that guy's crazy. You don't have to go for 90% or better. And they're like, well, I want to, though. So it can be kind of a double-edged sword. You get the camaraderie of, oh, you get it. You're a type 1 just like me. But then you also get a little bit of the comparison or the bias towards different strategies or methods that work for them, and they'll push it on their patients sometimes. It's unfortunate, but I mean, to be fair, I probably have biases too, right? I probably point my clients more towards the numerical side of diabetes versus the feeling side. I'm not going to tell my clients like, you can meditate your way to better blood sugars. I'm like, no, there's a calculation. It's simple math, right? That's my bias. So everyone has a bias with everything they teach. It's just part of life. And so you got to be aware of that and make sure that you're not getting caught in a trap, especially if you're doing your own research. Be aware of your own biases. All right, what else we got here? Most doctors refuse to prescribe a blood test for SD-LDL-C. Let's see what else we got. Still, I feel better talking to the nurse. Precaution, that is type 1 for years and have a pump like me than any doctor. There is a little bit of, and I don't want this to be a blanket statement, and I got to cut this off pretty soon, guys. Sorry. Can I get to my other clients? But this is not a blanket statement, but there is kind of a savior complex with a lot of doctors in general, where they think they are the source for your information. They'll make all the changes in your pump, and this can be said about endos, diabetic educators, anyone in the medical profession who spent a significant amount of time in school to prepare for this. To be fair, they know more than 99% of the population, but you and I, who want more out of life than just surviving with diabetes, and we want to thrive with our type 1 diabetes, they're not prepared for us to take it into our own hands. So when they take our pump and try and change the settings and just go, hey, shut up and just take this back. And we're like, no, but why did you do that? Because I want to understand the science behind it. They're like, that doesn't compute. No, just do what I say, right? I'm going to save you. And it's like, oh, that just really gets to me. So yes, I would say that if you have a person who is open to discussion and explaining things, why they happen, that's a huge pro. Another thing that I will be looking for in a doctor of primary care is, can I ask questions? Are you open to discussions, right? I am a very curious person. I want to know the reasons for things. This is, I believe, what led to my success with blood sugars, that I obsessed over the reasons that blood sugars fluctuate. Blood sugar spiked. Yeah, but why? Let's get to the root of this so I can solve it, right? So anyways, getting off track a little bit. I'm going to make this into an episode, so you guys will have that probably in the next week or two. It's going to go on the podcast. If you don't follow it yet, it's on YouTube. It's on Spotify, all the places. Everywhere except for YouTube, it's called Pardon My Pancreas, like the actual podcast. So you can search that, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. On YouTube, you just search FTF Warrior, and there's like 500 videos that I've put up over the last 5 years. So that's where you'll find that. And last thing for today, we're actually putting something together. It's a report for type 1s everywhere, how to get the most out of your blood sugar, how to stabilize them in a predictable way that allows you to have a bit more peace of mind, right? Because they're just cooperating. It's a written report. It's completely free. It hasn't been released yet, and we're still putting the final touches on it, but it's our way of getting the introductory elements into everyone's hands that don't require us to customize it. So it's like, hey, here's the ground rules of diabetes. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you have to focus on if you expect to make progress. So like I said, it hasn't even been launched yet, but that we're putting the final touches on today. It's probably going to go out in the next couple of days to our email list only. They're the only ones that are going to hear about this. But because y'all are here with me, if you comment report, I will DM you or message you or whatever with a link to grab it. So because y'all are hanging out, learning about diabetes, I appreciate that. I love hanging out with you guys and seeing you in the comments. So just comment report. And if you're on Instagram, DM me the word report. That's just easier, straightforward. Anywhere. DM me or comment, just the word report. And that's going to be a lot more of the strategies and tactics that we use in our programs about how diabetes can be managed a little bit differently when you are allowed to ask questions, when you can think outside of the box with blood sugars, right? And not follow the norm standard of care that gets you just barely past surviving. I see you guys on Facebook. Report. I got you. So appreciate you guys hanging out. Wish me luck as I go figure out and navigate the world of selecting a new doctor and medical team. Kind of getting a huge reset right now. And it's exciting. It's a little bit nerve-wracking because, everything's just kind of up in the air right now. I don't have anybody to prescribe me anything. So that's a little bit interesting, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. And I'm going to bring you guys on this journey with me so you can learn from my mistakes and from my victories. So appreciate you. That's all I got for you today. So have a great rest of your day. See you guys next week, every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And drop the word report if y'all want access to that free report. We'll get it to you. Okay. Thanks so much.